Friday's Connectivity Working Group meeting. This is our second to last one of the year. We'll have one final one in December before we close out 2024, which is crazy. So with that, we'll do the antitrust. Jeff, can I call on you for that?
Sure. Antitrust compliance statement. The Advanced Water Heating Initiative is a member-supported collaborative of professionals from across the U.S., actually internationally now. This diverse membership includes numerous competitors, and care must be taken to scrupulously abide by federal and state antitrust laws. Members should remember that antitrust compliance is important at all times. At this and other AWHI meetings, participants should not discuss competitive pricing, profitability, allocating markets or customers, or promotion of a particular product and/or accessory.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And if we have anybody who is here today who has not been on one of these meetings today, I encourage you to come off camera for a moment and introduce yourself and where you work.
And also reminder, in the chat, please put in your name, your role, and your organization.
Absolutely. So here's our agenda today. Just going to go over some Heat Pump Water Heater Day recap, sharing some of the awesome statistics and great growth we've had in that event, and kind of as it relates to this working group and AWHI as a whole. And we'll have Sam Rosenberg on talking about a really exciting Alaska heat pump load shifting study. So I know we normally just keep it to heat pump water heaters here, but branching out a little bit, especially considering this study is also focused on CTA 2045 implementation. So it should still be very relevant. And the more loads we can aggregate in a home, the more valuable it'll be to the grid and the more money and emissions you can potentially save. So with that, I'll get into some Heat Pump Water Heater Day statistics real quick. So that was just at the end of last month. Went super well. We had, I think, 8 or 9 different presentations on different facets of heat pump water heaters. So everything from implementation and installation to managing programs, and even a great session on load shifting where we had Jeff, Peter Grant, and Amelie Besson, all who are in this group, present. So that was really great. You can, I believe, catch the recaps on YouTube. I'll check if they're up yet. So there's been an evolution of Heat Pump Water Heater Day where we've tried out some different themes, which has been fun. We had, a lot of great graphic design this year, and I think making heat pump water heaters flashy in any sort of way that we can is going to, help get people excited about the technology, right? And we had this market transformers theme, which is super fun. So kind of the different facets of how you can push this market forward, whether it's through policy levers, through new and innovative products, or through well-designed programs. And I kind of talked about this already, but had some of our own connectivity working group members presenting, as well as some awesome keynote speakers, such as from Secretary Granholm. And I was even surprised at this too, just how many folks registered. So quite a huge bit of participation. So really good to grow our audience for, load shifting especially. Just some quick stats on LinkedIn impressions. So got a ton of buzz. And then we do have another upcoming webinar off topic from here, but if anybody's interested, some commercial refrigeration webinar. You can load shift with everything, and especially these are CO2 heat pumps, which are great for storage. So just a FYI. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to either Jeff or Eric from NIA for a second here to talk about some CTA 2045C updates.
Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Eric Olson. I work at NIA in our emerging technology and product management team. I'm stepping into some of the load flex and connectivity work that Jeff was previously leading, since he has decided that he deserves retirement, and we fully agree with that. So a quick update on CTA 2045C. So currently we are building a list for everyone that would like to review it, which is going to include changes in water heating and other applications. So if you have ideas for things that could be improved and how to do so, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email there in the chat, and it should also be on the updated meeting invites. Jeff, any other color or anything else we should add to that?
Not at this point. We've got a CES or CTA 2045 committee getting started. If you would really like to be working in the minutia, you're welcome to join. Reach out to me, Tristan, Rolf, Ken Wax, and several others. We can figure out how to do that. You will have to become a member of CTA, and you will have to participate in all the meetings. But the other easier way to do it is float up your ideas or concerns or enhancements from this group to one of us. Bob Bass, Dr. Bob Bass has also been participating a bit. So we've got a good group of people, and I think we've got the right intentions. We just want to make sure we're not missing anything. So float it up to us if you want.
Great, thanks for that. Definitely an important thing as the standard continues to evolve. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sam for the main presentation here. Sam, if you want to share your slides, that would be awesome. And just a quick intro, I came across this study thanks to a couple different recommendations. A few folks at various conferences had mentioned Sam Rosenberg's study in Alaska, and just the innovative kind of thought that went into this pilot, and the fact that there's some great stress testing going on concerning the climate. So was just really excited when I read this and wanted to have Sam on. So Sam, thanks so much for joining. I think you're muted there.
Yep, Sam, you're muted.
Whoops. Thank you for the intros, and I'm happy people are liking the work we're doing. I love this project. I love this community up in Alaska that we've been working in. So it's been a great project, and so yeah, thanks for having me on. This is a project we're calling Load Flexibility with Heat Pumps in Rural Cold Climates. Long title, I know. But this is like I said, a fantastic project that we've been conducting over the past few years. We started in Portland doing our pilot, and then moved up to Cordova, Alaska, where we'll be talking about today. Again, I am Sam Rosenberg. I am a data scientist and building scientist at Pacific Northwest National Lab. And I work on this project with a fantastic team. Chitra Nambiar and Alex Fletcher-Costas are my co-researchers. Abhinesh Selvakanabadi is our project manager. Sharon Metzger manages our residential buildings portfolio, and Alex Rees is our DOE client technology manager for this project. So why are we doing this is a good question. We're doing this research, this load shifting demand response research in a cold climate, a remote rural climate. And there are reasons why. First, we know that winter peaking is prevalent in cold climates with HVAC. And this has a real financial impact on customers of the utility or home occupants, and to the utility itself. And so we really want to understand what those impacts are in the real world, quantify them, and try to kind of develop plans so that those utilities, the homeowners, state, local, federal organizations can meet goals that are set. And we really want to pull out some success stories about this. So we'll talk a little bit today about some of those things. What we're missing in this presentation is actually a really big chunk of this project, and I'll bring it up a few times. But one major aspect of this project has been developing occupant comfort analysis strategies and methodologies to really dive into how our load flexibility events are impacting the occupants and how we can maximize our peak time savings by prioritizing the occupant in the that's participating in the events. So to reiterate our goals, we're asking a few questions. We're asking, how can residential HVAC load flexibility impact rural cold climate peak load energy consumption? We want to continue to understand CTA 2045 based communication as it pertains to space conditioning. And we really are diving into occupant comfort implications of residential load flexibility. So I won't go too deep into CTA 2045 because I might be pretty low on the list of experts on this call, which is nice. But it is, as many of you I'm sure know, a ANSI CTA standard that was published in 2013 and CTA 2045B published in 2021. And for our case, we kind of think of it as something that allows devices to connect to various systems and implement some type of control via a communication interface. It also allows communication via various networking pathways, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And for our very simple use, we get set point, set point. So this is a very narrow use of what CTA 2045 can enable. But this is how we're using it in this application, and we can talk about why we do such a simple use later as well. To go back a little bit before we went up to Alaska, as I mentioned, we did this in Portland. This was our first attempt at doing any type of demand response, or as we're now calling it, load flexibility, using CTA 2045 space conditioning in that extremely grainy chart. Sorry about that. You can kind of see that we were successful. That dashed orange line inside of the yellow shaded region is showing a large gap beneath our black line, which is our baseline. That is our successful peak load reduction. Looks great, not super surprising, but this was kind of the pilot that helped us develop some methods to use these systems and conduct this project. So we wrapped up in Portland and we said, bring on the cold, and we went up to Alaska, Cordova, Alaska specifically. This is a beautiful fishing town in southeast Alaska, about 180 miles outside of Anchorage on the coast. They have a local co-op electric utility with a 1-to-1 vote, basically, for each resident in town. There are about 2,200 people in town. And that co-op utility was very excited to work with us on this, as they're getting they have their own goals around bringing electric space conditioning into town. And there's also a lot of local momentum outside of the utility. That picture in the bottom left, you can see some guys pressure washing the ocean. That is just following the Exxon Valdez oil spill, which happened about 30 miles away from the harbor in Cordova. They have been dealing with the impacts of this for a long time. Many people who live in town now saw this firsthand. And as a remote village that relies entirely on fuel oil for heating before this study, and they do a lot of heating, there's a lot of kind of local momentum to shift away from these things that they've firsthand seen the repercussions from, at least one of the types of repercussions from. So that was really handy when we were recruiting and just kind of coming to town in general, and has really helped our larger market transformation as a result of this project. Cordova is great for heat pumps and demand flexibility for other reasons as well. First of all, excellent weather. It's not too cold. It's in the 20s to 30s during those coldest months, up into the 50s, 60s in the warmer months. There are some 80-degree days in Cordova. A lot of solar gain, a lot of windows. People are excited about air conditioning. So that's been another great selling point for heat pumps in Cordova. They also have a great renewable and fuel grid mix. In the summertime, they operate mostly on hydroelectric generation. In the wintertime, those rivers freeze and they revert back to diesel. Although they do have some major projects in coordination with DOE and funded by the federal government and state governments to increase generation during the wintertime from renewable resources through a variety of pathways. And additionally, those existing heating systems, you see an example in the bottom left there. You have a pretty standard single point space conditioning heater. You'll often find one of these in a living room in Cordova. No other locations in the home will have a heating source. And it's kind of, let the wind take it kind of thing with these systems. They also have a lot of aging fuel oil storage systems outside, which are leaking, expensive to clean and repair, and another great selling point for decommissioning or replacing or assisting with an electric heat pump. So this study was not easy to initiate. We first went up there and found that nobody local was installing heat pumps. We weren't surprised by this, but we're really excited that the local company, which is a two-man show, they were excited to work with us. That's Copper Highway Heating. If you're ever in Cordova, need a HVAC contractor, you can find them. And so we sent them down to Seattle, Tacoma for a training course. We then recruited participants with the local electric co-op. And then with those participants, we had that HVAC company install heat pumps in their homes. We then came up and installed the CTA 2045 interface and our data loggers, and then got some background info out of the electric utility to help us kind of plan our study and develop our load flexibility methods. And then we did that. We developed those methods with three main points. We wanted to keep occupants comfortable. We wanted to maximize our peak load reduction and minimize post-event peaking. In the bottom, you see some of the equipment, indoor and outdoor units of the ductless mini split, and then the CTA 2045 interface that plugs into the indoor unit, and the module that plugs into the interface. So here's a messy diagram of some of the communication. Most of this relied on a cellular modem that delivered a Wi-Fi network in the home, but I think the interesting piece here is the alternative communication pathways provided by this specific implementation of the CTA 2045 communication, allowing some FM and LTE communication outside of the Wi-Fi network that was generated in the home.
Hey Sam, we've got one question in the chat. Was this mostly done with Mitsubishi products, or was it done exclusively with Mitsubishi products?
It was exclusively, yeah. That's the reality of finding compatible equipment at this stage in the market with this equipment. Mitsubishi, here, let me go back a slide. So this CTA 2045 interface is a Mitsubishi adapter. This little plug here plugs into the port on the computer in the indoor unit that is used for their Kumo Cloud Wi-Fi system. So one downside to implementing this is that you can't have the participant retain their Wi-Fi thermostat on their phone, which wasn't a problem in this case because we were installing the heat pumps, but we did run into some unhappiness in our Portland sample when we had to remove those from homes. But yes, all Mitsubishi. I'd love to see other compatibilities in the future. There may be some now, but we'd worked with Mitsubishi before, so that's what we did. Okay. So for our event types, we had quite a few. This is the subset of ones where we were able to collect good data. I don't think I mentioned this. It was a very small study. We had 3 homes in Cordova. We can talk about that more in the questions because that raises questions, certainly. But we lost a lot of data along the way. So these are the events that we could kind of compare to each other and our baseline with good data from multiple homes. So we did a couple 1-hour events with and without preheating, and then 2-hour events with and without preheating at 2 degrees and 6 degrees Fahrenheit set point reductions. And great, it worked. We saw reliable hourly peak time energy reductions during our events over baseline. Some worked better, some were not as strong. And there's a paper that we wrote about this that really dives into kind of some of the reasons that these were not as strong. But in general, we saw a 6 to 35% hourly energy consumption reduction during those test hours. We also reliably saw that preheating increases the reduction across all tests, and that preheating minimizes occupant discomfort and occupant opt-out, which we believe is largely leading to the success of those events over events without preheating. But this is another reason that you can never forget that your couch is a battery, and everything in your house is as well. So preheating worked well, and we showed that large set point reductions can be effective. I have 3 stars there because I presented this similar presentation alongside my colleague Chitra, who her entire presentation was around those comfort aspects, and she dives into how those large set point reductions can be dangerous as well as effective, because you can really lose your participant base, and all of a sudden you have a lot of lost potential. If you want more information on that, please send me a message. I have a couple slide decks that are very readable, that I can share. Outside of the energy performance, which honestly is as expected, we're seeing reductions when we're reducing set point. That's fantastic. We found that CTA 2045 communication reliability was likely better than other types of communication, specifically better than just relying on Wi-Fi. Various types of communication can be implemented via LTE and FM on top of Wi-Fi. Many other systems rely upon just Wi-Fi. And so we had a fair amount of lost Wi-Fi network in this study due to the remote location and cell tower issues. We see that in other places as well for a multitude of reasons, mostly around the participant and their activity. So in general, it's reasonable to assume that you'll have some Wi-Fi downtime. And if we would have been relying upon Wi-Fi only, we would have missed, I believe, 5 events or 4 events. But we were not, and we ended up missing 0 events during the testing periods through the study. So there's some more work for us to do here. We have data that we need to analyze, but preliminarily, it seems much more reliable to use, a multi communication pathway to send these type of signals. The information you receive back is less important, we find, than sending the event directly, especially as you scale.
Sam, we have another question you may
get
to from Cooper at Quick Carbon. How does cell service reliability affect Wi-Fi reliability? Aren't they independent of each other?
So that's a fair question. So the cell service reliability impacted Wi-Fi reliability in this study, specifically because of this. So this is not my house, right? This is also a remote location. This is pretty common. We used a cellular modem to deliver that Wi-Fi network. So the Wi-Fi was it's a modem that has a SIM card in it that is talking to an LTE cell tower. Then that modem provides a Wi-Fi network in the home. So we lost Wi-Fi because of that the cell communication. In our Portland study, for example, we lost Wi-Fi in some homes because of people changing passwords that were that the equipment was connected to. We lost Wi-Fi because people didn't pay their bills. We lost Wi-Fi because people unplugged something and plugged the Ethernet cord into their, TV for better streaming, or their Xbox for gaming, or, there are many reasons you lose access to Wi-Fi in a occupied home. And so, whether that's intermittent or permanent is a different question. But being able to send signals to the equipment and hopefully receive some information back via something that can't really be impacted by the home occupant's activities. We find that to be pretty, we think that's pretty important. And we think that will become more and more important as you scale a program like this up to, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of end use devices that are trying to be kind of used together to do a grid scale peak load reduction across a grid that's bigger than 800 homes, as we see in Cordova, or actually including in Cordova. 800 homes is not a small amount of homes. If we get heat pumps in all of them, we'll hopefully not rely on homeowner Wi-Fi there as well. But in short, we found that being able to send these signals through something that the homeowner can't really mess with was handy, and probably better for our realizing the potential savings. So some observations from the homes and systems. This was the first time anybody in town had a residential heat pump. So there wasn't a lot of experience. There also wasn't a lot of trust. And that was kind of earned through the, successful use of the equipment. It worked well for most of these people. And so as time went on, they got a lot more comfortable with the heat pumps. But they did note a learning curve as far as controlling the system and what to expect from the system. And really, I think only one of our three participating households have kind of crossed over that peak and are on the side of really understanding the system. The other two are doing a lot better than they were a year ago when we installed, but are still kind of getting used to the systems. And we also saw other fuel sources being used sporadically. We left their fuel oil systems in place. And so managing both systems was confusing at first, although we did ask them not to operate the systems. They still did at times. And as far as the home characteristics, we did some auditing when we went in. This is a description of each of our three sites. One was a retrofitted shed that was very drafty, and the participant complained about drafts and cold spots before, and then also noted that the heat pump was not necessarily delivering everywhere in the home. This was both a sizing issue and a home characteristics issue. Another site was very large, built in the 2010s, but had a ton of window area, really tall ceilings, lots of interior doors, and they did not like running their ceiling fan. So again, they had some distribution issues. Not much worse in both of these cases than their previous systems, which were also single point heating. But our site that performed extremely well was recently retrofitted to improve the envelope. Lots of insulation and air sealing work had been done, and the home occupant was really prepared for this type of system. They had looked for heat pumps in the past. They were really excited about it. And so this is the site that was extremely successful, both with accepting the technology and performing with the demand flexibility testing. We also did some billing analysis, and we saw great savings, especially in the swing seasons. Part of this is because in Cordova, fuel oil is expensive and electricity is cheap. They have a great rate. But, in general, this is kind of the trend that we're hoping to see, especially with a well-balanced dual fuel setup, which they did have in these cases. But we saw big savings in the fall and spring. We saw negative savings in the summer, of course, because they didn't have air conditioning before, and they used a lot of air conditioning in the summer. So that one's kind of hard to compare. But for these two sites, we saw legitimate savings in the fall and spring, and then just a small bump in cost across those colder winter months, which is really promising. This is a cold location. The rest of the U.S., assuming positive rates, is looking great to save money here. And next, what are we doing? We're doing this in a colder location in a lot more homes. We're moving up to Elam, Alaska, which is a 200-person native village just south of the Arctic Circle. And we're doing this in collaboration with the Department of Housing and Urban Development and Weatherization Assistance Program. They installed about 40 heat pumps in those homes, and we're going up to do some monitoring and continue our demand flexibility testing. This segment of the project will not rely on CTA 2045 as the equipment isn't immediately compatible. But what we're focusing on here is kind of continuing that demand response, demand flexibility, you know, assessment, while really bolstering our occupant comfort evaluation. As I briefly mentioned, this segment was more on the occupant comfort side about learning how to conduct that research. This larger sample will be a more research grade, reliable assessment of occupant comfort. And with that, I am done. Thank you for listening. Thank you for having me. I'm always happy to chat about this. So please reach out to me or ask questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was awesome. And yeah, really glad to get the debrief here. And I think the occupant comfort lessons and set points and everything really applies to all the heat pump water heater work we do too. So this is also interrelated and just points to how we can all learn from each other even more. So I think there are some questions. So Tristan, if you want to jump on.
Hey, thanks a lot, Sam, for a great presentation. So I'm not sure if I really sussed out the difference between the energy efficiency and maybe the way a heat pump works for comfort, right? Versus
Sure.
the actual value of the shift or the flex.
Yeah.
And I apologize if you made that clear. And it sounds also like you're about to do something, but go ahead. If you could just, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Thanks.
I think in general, so the heat pump, so this is not a grid that is used to electric resistance heating. So we don't have that baseline load that the heat pump is automatically reducing. We're adding a new electric load here, and if you scale that out to every home in town, of course, that's a very large baseline profile. The heat pump, allows us to reduce, and I think a lot of us have probably talked about this at a time or another, but the heat pump allows us to take that baseline load line down a fair amount, but we still see peaking in Cordova in the early morning around 6 a.m. to around 8 a.m. And in the evening. And that's due to your standard peaking drivers. It's cold outside, you're waking up, similar to water heating where it's you're taking your shower. But we still see those loads, and so our baseline reduction due to the efficiency of the heat pump over electric resistance isn't enough in this case to bring that load line down enough that the peak is irrelevant. The peak is still relevant here. In Cordova specifically, what the peak means is that they are in the morning and the evening, they're firing on their diesel generators because between the time of and their storage hydro systems, they aren't meeting demand at those peak hours. So from our projections, of course, we've only done this in 3 homes, and so how reliable are your projections? That's fair. But from our projections, doing this with our 2-hour 2-degree Fahrenheit with preheating tests, likely under relatively normal conditions when hydro generation is active, there are many days, more days than not, you will not have to turn on that diesel plant. So that's, of course, a pretty loose projection given the sample size, but that's the goal.
Cool. So just one quick follow-up question, Sam. It sounds like, the nice thing is this was an 800 home town, and you could conceive of maybe if all 800 homes had it, you could say, hey, can we feather and flatten? Like, what if we told people, hey, we're going to be able to turn your heat on a little earlier than you'd like,
Yep.
because when you wake up, it's going to be nice and warm. And, but then you'd have to figure out how to charge for that, right? Because they might be turning on heat a little earlier than they'd want, but there's a huge value to the grid to be feathering, avoiding steep snapbacks, etc.
Yeah.
Did you guys model any of that out?
So we didn't we haven't provided guidance about time of use pricing to this utility yet. I don't know if that's something we're going to do either. There's debate as to whether kind of time of use pricing in that way will benefit the customer or the utility, equally, I guess. We're more interested in this case. We didn't model it for anybody. We have looked at our post-event rebounding, which we're trying to kind of keep in control, and we're able to keep in control a little bit better with preheating. But of course, then you're initializing a preheating load. The rate structure, I think, is kind of up to the specifics of the location that you're doing this type of work. The way that this is one of the outcomes of this is that the utility developed an incentive program for installing this type of equipment. So you now, as a citizen of Cordova, Alaska, you get $5,000 off your heat pump install, and I believe $100 monthly credit for installing a heat pump in town. So they're kind of taking it as they're taking kind of the first cost and then reoccurring bill credit route of incentivizing these products.
Cool. So my last thing, just if you could comment on, is what if you took the whole 800 folks in town and just imagine they all have this technology? Could you somehow say, hey, we're going to give you, a changing price per month? Because obviously in the winter, it's going to be, you're going to use more heat than in the spring and the summer per se. But you could almost imagine, hey, if we're just feathering the loads and really managing stuff, and you're telling us when you want your heat, like, once or twice per season, and just somehow having a fixed service fee that changes monthly, but that gives you this orchestration flexing capability, because at the end of the day, it would be really interesting to model how valuable is it to the utility where, hey, they can be giving people much less expensive heat because they can flex it across the entire town.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That would be very interesting. I think that would be easier to kind of consider in a place that has other end uses. So there's no electric resistance heat in town, right? So doing that would kind of suggest that so that would be applied to everybody. And I think kind of the consideration there is more, I think kind of what they will end up doing in Cordova is that rather than changing pricing monthly, they take that into account when they're submitting their year's rate. And it's kind of averaged out across all of the months. That's what I foresee in Cordova. But given that, so fuel oil is not delivered by the utility. Fuel oil is delivered by a barge and a truck, a different company, Shore something oil. They come once a month and top off your tank. So we have different utilities operating the delivery. So yes, I think that there is a place for and in places where it's optional to participate in this type of demand flexibility, that's another thing. It's unclear what the utility is going to do as far as their program design. There is a world in which equipment that can be connected to the program must be connected to the program just because of the way they do things up there. But yeah, incentivizing participation, there are a lot of pathways to do that. I agree that flexible pricing is one potential good pathway to do that.
All right, Sam, thank you. So we got a couple questions in the chat. One is from Bruce Health. I think you already answered this, but from a building science perspective, have you results for the effectiveness of preheating during a low price period? But it doesn't sound like they're necessarily on time of use up in
they're not
up in this community. Okay.
Yeah, they're not on time of use, but yeah.
And then from Jeff Wicks, have the heat pump users been informed about the concept of not changing set points radically to minimize their load in the winter?
Yeah, so we and maybe this would be a good thing to share at some point too, but we developed kind of a how-to guide on getting your first ductless heat pump, and everything from, yes, kind of set it and forget it if you can. This was really big because they were used to, like 120,000 BTU instantaneous hot blowing air coming out of those space conditioners in their living room and turning those things off after like 20 minutes because it's getting super warm in the house. So they kind of previously the participants were the thermostat, right? Now we're wanting this kind of smarter technology with better control algorithms built in, variable speed heat pumps working as variable speed heat pumps. So yeah, we delivered a document describing, kind of how to operate it, how to use the remotes, what to expect, knowing that the air coming out of the fan won't be as warm as you're expecting, but your house will warm up. Just let it happen. So yeah, there was a lot of kind of teaching on that. And we did that mostly at the beginning, so we weren't skewing our baseline or test days.
So, a question from me. So, I know this is a very small sample size, but since these were variable capacity, variable speed heat pumps, did any of the requests, did it just ask the unit to throttle down a little bit, or were most of the requests asking it to basically shift the load or do
Yeah.
a complete shed?
That's a good question, and I actually answered this poorly at a ACEEE summer study, so I'm happy to kind of give it another go. So we considered doing kind of capacity percentage based management. The reason I think that we're happy with this set point full step back management is that what we're developing here is that occupants are comfortable offsetting by a range of temperatures, and how those range of temperatures impact each individual occupant is something you can learn from. But we know that we have kind of a range of maybe 2 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Fahrenheit or 6 if we step down in this pathway, or kind of step down across this method. We know that that's kind of our limit. We always know that we want to maximize our savings within that limit. So by just hitting that limit directly, I think we're doing a pretty good job at maximizing our savings within the comfort range of our participant. So we're going to the edge, but we're not going over the edge. And when you go over the edge, you lose the home. You completely get away from all of your potential savings because they're no longer participating in the day or in the week or in the program at all, because they're uncomfortable. And so that's, I think, one of the benefits of going to using a set point is that, you kind of know that you're getting down. Now, if you want to really dive into understanding the potential at understanding the impact of kind of the control logic of a variable speed heat pump and how it responds to a large delta in set point or medium delta in set point instantaneously, that is something that could lead to percentage-based demand flexibility being more impactful. But that's really reliant upon understanding the controls system of that specific unit. And it's kind of my opinion, and this isn't backed in deep science. This is backed in kind of my opinion from watching a lot of these units. Understanding the controls of an individual unit and kind of the operation resulting from those controls is very difficult. And so, the way an individual unit responds to either a capacity-based change or a set point-based change might be different even within the same model number. And so that's kind of why we're more focused on let's go to where we know the occupant will stay, and hope that the savings follow. And so far, they have seemed to follow, both in our Portland sample, which was 12 homes, and this sample, which was 3. We're hoping that this next 20 to 40 up farther north will continue along that trend, although we do have plans to test against some new DR standards that are capacity-based changes.
Excellent. And then another question from me. Have the utilities kind of increased their incentives for weatherization, or kind of doubled up the importance of weatherization prior to going to a heat pump technology based on these findings?
Yeah, so we've talked about that a lot up in Cordova. This is a small town. There's not a ton of
Mhm.
local funding. What they have done is they are working with the state energy office that's delivering, IRA and other incentive and rebate programs that are federally funded. And so they're working, the utilities working on developing a program that helps home occupants locally access those funds. And one of the ways to get your $5,000 incentive approved is to have had some energy auditing done and meeting some thresholds. So the nice thing about Alaska is that things are generally pretty well insulated. It's cold, and they know that, and it's always been cold. And so things aren't built the way you would see a house built. I'm in Portland. You'll see some houses up there that are strange, but well insulated they generally are. Well, air sealed, that's a different issue. But so no, nothing directly from the utility. We're hoping that outside funds will help that. We'll see how it goes.
Thanks, Sam. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, but I want to offer anybody, if there's any more questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand in Teams.
And I'll just say I'm happy to share this presentation, and I have others that I can share. My email's right there. Please send me one. I'll get back to you with questions or share presentations or papers or anything like that. I think we have two papers and maybe 4 or 5 presentations to share about this specific project. So
excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for being willing to do that. And your colleagues' presentation sounded fascinating as well with the set point focus. So I'll probably ping you myself and ask for that. So yeah, thanks again, Sam. Really appreciate having you on.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's it for today, folks, unless somebody wants to chime in with any other updates. But otherwise, the next meeting is going to be on December 6th. We're going to have Karen Fanati from FSEC talking about a very in-depth heat pump water heater pilot in Florida. And then I believe we'll also have some RMI folks on talking about some of their connectivity work.
Yeah, if I could just add one more item here quickly.
Absolutely, Bruce.
Yeah, it's great to see that 2045 might get updated. We're also updating OpenADR 3 at the same time, and some of you may recall that it's possible to tunnel any CTA 2045 command that's useful over OpenADR 3. And so if there's potentially anything people want to change in OpenADR 3, the window's now open. I don't specifically have anything in mind, but somebody else might. And if you do, please contact me.
Sounds good. Thank you, Bruce.
I'd add to that, Bruce, and thanks for bringing that up. It'd be good to get alignment with all this so that we don't have things either out of sequence and or speaking different directions. So this is awesome. Thanks for the reminder.